Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure I am up. I'm seeing green, so I'm assuming that the world is good on this front. Let me check my sound. I tend to check my sound because I'm now paranoid, because it has a tendency to drop. Good. So hello on a Monday for everybody. So before I start on this, first I want to thank everyone for, well, for one, showing up. That's always a start. People who donate, people who contribute, people who like my videos, people who share my videos. I've said it before, even if you dislike my video, if you actually gave me the benefit of the doubt, or at the very least you heard me out, still, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Just for announcements, for this month, or for this week, Caitlin Johnston is going to be here tomorrow at 9:00 p.m. Eastern. Stephen Bassett is going to be here at 4:00 Thursday. So I'm trying to arrange a few more. So I have Democratic Socialists of America. I have an interview coming up with those guys. They're going to be in Richmond. They have an office in Richmond. So I am actually going to go and meet them, either for an interview at their office or some get-together of some sort. And Cynthia McKinney had said she'd have a conversation also. So I have a few interviews lined up, so that should be damn interesting. Yeah, that should be damn interesting. So for today's show, I saw this article, I think it was last night, and I got to be honest, I almost logged back on at like 12 o'clock in order to do this particular article, but I left it. And I waited until today when I was going to do my actual show. Do you remember this? Let's see. This was last year when Donna Brazile went on the Tim Black show. Now, this was hyped up pretty big because Donna Brazile had just came out and essentially dropped this bombshell that wasn't a bombshell at all, saying a secret that everybody in the world already knew, that the DNC had rigged the primaries. Now, she tried to clean this up. She tried to backstep on this, but ultimately, at the end of the day, when you read the piece, she was hawking her book. And in hawking it, it got across very clear, even if you just use her language by itself, it's somewhat indefensible from the standpoint of you giving one side an advantage over the other. I've always heard giving one side the advantage over the other is called cheating. Now, for whatever degree you want to say that cheating is, meaning I would say it's further than what you would say it is, but at the very least, it was impactful, and it was clearly one side being favored over the other side, despite the rule set saying we're going to be impartial, we're going to be honest and fair, etc., etc., etc. There's a question that Tim Black asked Donna Brazile on this, and I want you to listen to Donna Brazile's answer, and we'll talk about it after. Let's see. Come on.
It doesn't matter who calls me or who follows up with me. I know who I respect in this process, and I will always call them friends.
Now, Donna, are you aware that during the litigation suit, the DNC fraud lawsuit that was brought by Jared and Elizabeth Beck, there was testimony by the DNC lawyers that said, and I quote, he says, "Hey, but where you have a party that's saying we're going to, choose our standard bearer, and we're going to follow these general rules of the road, which we are voluntarily deciding, we could have voluntarily decided that, look, we're going to go into a back room. They used to and smoke cigars and pick candidates that way. That's not the way it was done, but they could have." Can you imagine, like, the voters out there, people who worked on these campaigns, who donated money, when they hear the DNC lawyers make these claims that they could pick their own candidate, what incentive does that give voters and campaigners and activists a reason to support Democrats?
Well, first of all, if any lawyer said that, they should be stripped of their responsibility to represent the Democratic Party. That's not the way in which I've seen the party operate. And remember, I came in at a time as a staff person when Jesse Jackson was challenging the status quo. We open our doors to everyone. we allow everybody to get a seat at the table. I think we need to create more incentives for people to join the Democratic Party. So my recommendation is that everyone should come in, be involved in the party, engage the party, stop throwing shade, and become members, actively engaged to work to strengthen the party from the inside out. I know there are people who attack the Democratic Party, but let me just tell you, the Democratic Party is made up of a lot of activists, a lot of people who work very hard at the state and local levels to ensure that we have the best quality candidates, that we can register new voters, that we can get voters out. And yes, we can also encourage people to run for office. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Well,
just so we're clear here, I mean, we ended up in the fucking boonies. Tim Black asked her about their lawyers, the lawyers for the DNC, the lawyers for the party that she belongs to, and that she herself was for a short time period head of. Your lawyers, the people who represent your party, and Deborah Wasserman-Schultz said that you guys can lie whenever you want to lie, and you can choose your candidates in a back room if you wanted to choose. How does that give people incentive in order to join the party, knowing that the Democratic Party can, for the most part, do whatever the hell it wants to do? And this is put in the context of a lawsuit that was brought against the DNC saying they committed fraud. Now, I would argue that this is, on its face, fraud. If your candidate, if you're having a contest, and just to be very clear on this also, the Democratic Party is right about that. The Democratic Party is a corporation. And as a corporation, that corporation can do whatever it wants to do from the standpoint of internal matters. Meaning, if they wanted to choose a candidate in the back room, if they wanted to forego the primary process entirely, they could forego the primary process entirely. Now, the question becomes, would anybody vote for their candidate? So there's that issue. But for all intents and purposes, they are a private enterprise. Here's the catch. If you open up the process and you look me in the eye and you tell me, look, we're having an election, and we're opening up this election for you to vote and for you to send money to the candidates who are running in this election. Now, you're telling me that your bylaws are being honest and straightforward, that you have to be impartial. You have one grinning idiot after the next coming on saying that this is a fair, impartial process and the DNC does not pick candidates, etc., etc., etc. The moment that people send money, and people sent $220 million to Bernie Sanders, do you honestly believe that if those people knew that the process was being rigged for a particular candidate, that they would have sent that much money to Bernie Sanders? You're in a process. And if they would have came out and said, look, we're choosing Hillary Clinton. We are going to game the system in a way that is going to make it far more difficult for Bernie Sanders to run, even though Bernie Sanders already have an uphill climb. We're going to make his life miserable. We're going to use media against him. We're going to be shutting down polling locations. We're going to be kicking people off the voter rolls. We're going to outright steal states. And while we steal states, we're going to say that he was throwing chairs and his people were being rowdy and that Bernie Sanders is the white candidate. All this other weird political stuff that was used as an attack, not just by the campaign itself, but also by the DNC, the same organization that is supposed to be fair, impartial, unbiased. Now, if you tell me that up front, then I can't bitch. I'm not, I sent Bernie Sanders this much money, but to their credit, they told me they were going to cheat Bernie Sanders. That's not what happened. It was the opposite of that. People were sending their hard-earned cash. They wanted that man to be the avatar of their will for a change in the political process. They cheated the guy. Now, do you honestly believe, like I said, that they would have sent him that cash if they would have known the truth of what was taking place? No, they wouldn't. Tim Black is asking her a valid and decent question. How can you incentivize people to get involved in the political process when you, for all intents and purposes, have asserted the right to game that process whenever you want to game that process? He pushes her on this. So let's hear Tim Black push her on this.
I respect that and I understand it. But that statement I just read you, that was said in a court of law. That's them on the record saying.
Can you tell me what law firm and who was that?
Who the actual lawyers were?
Personally, Tim, if you know anything about me.
Stop. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Did the lawyers say that? The answer is yes. Were they representing the DNC? The answer is also yes. What does the name matter? What does the name matter? Stop trying to obfuscate. He's asking you a straightforward question. You can't answer that question. And to nail the point home, Tim Black is absolutely right. So, let's see. We have footage of the DNC making that lawsuit, or the lawyer for the DNC making his argument. Apparently, I don't have that footage. I do have a document, though. Let's take a look at the document itself. But if we're being honest, that's pretty much that Duncan made a better case. DNC lawyers argue DNC has a right to pick candidates in back rooms. So this is what Tim Black was talking about when he asked Donna Brazile. So I highlighted a few points. Shortly into the hearing, DNC attorneys claim Article 5, Section 4 of the DNC Charter, stipulating that the DNC chair and their staff must ensure neutrality in the Democratic presidential primaries, is a discretionary rule that didn't need to be adopted to begin with. Based on the assumption, DNC attorneys asserted that the court cannot interpret, claim, or rule anything associated with whether the DNC remains neutral in their presidential primaries. Let me read that again, because that sounds bizarre. Shortly into the hearing, DNC attorneys claim Article 5, Section 4 of the DNC Charter, here we are, stipulating that the DNC chair and their staff must ensure neutrality in the Democratic presidential primaries, is a discretionary rule that didn't need to adopt to begin with. Based on this assumption, DNC attorneys assert that the court cannot interpret, claim, or rule anything associated with whether the DNC remains neutral in their presidential primaries. It's at our discretion on whether or not we're going to be neutral. That's not something for you to challenge or for the courts to challenge. The attorneys representing the DNC have previously argued that Sanders supporters knew the primaries were rigged, therefore annulling any potential accountability the DNC may have. In the latest hearings, they doubled down on this argument. The court would have to find that people who fervently supported Bernie Sanders and who purportedly didn't know that this favoritism was going on would not have given to Mr. Sanders or to Senator Sanders if they had known that there was this purported favoritism. This is Jerry Beck. People paid money in this reliance on the understanding that the primary elections for the Democratic nominee, nominating process in 2016 were fair and impartial, Beck said. And that's not just a bedrock assumption that we assume just by virtue of the fact that we live in a democracy and we assume that our elections are run in a fair and impartial manner. But that's what the Democratic National Committee's own charter says. It says it in black and white, and they can't deny that, he added. Not only is that in the charter, but it was also stated over and over again in the media by the Democratic National Committee's employees, including Congresswoman Deborah Wasserman Schultz, that they were, in fact, acting in compliance with the charter, and that they said it again and again, as we've cited in several instances of this case. Later in the hearings, attorney representing the DNC claimed that the Democratic National Committee would be well within their rights to go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. By pushing the argument throughout the proceedings of this class action lawsuit that the Democratic National Committee is telling voters in a court of law that they see no enforceable obligation in having to run fair and impartial elections. That's a mind-blowing thing, and they're right. Understand the argument they're making. Look, we're not saying that we cheated Sanders, but if we did cheat Sanders, can't do anything about it. We're a corporation. We can do whatever we want. This is an eternal matter. And then doubling down on it, and even if we did cheat Sanders, those people knew that we were showing favoritism to Hillary Clinton, in which case they gave anyway. So if it's like, whether we cheated or not, you can't touch us. That's the bulk of the argument. Tim Black was right. Now, the catch for this is Donna Brazile came out, because I want to make this point, that even if we don't go any further, meaning even if we just go by Donna Brazile's account by itself, it is a difficult argument to make that it's not showing favoritism and it's not showing this deference to one side over the other. So let's take Donna Brazile's own words. Donna Brazile was being a loyal soldier in this particular interview. And there's a few reasons for that. Before we go to the root, there's a few reasons for that. In fact, no, let's go to words first. So this is the Political article. I'm not going to read much of this because I've read this article before. But just the part. I just want to make this point of, even based on their own statement, it is magnificent favoritism for one side over the other. That's kind of the point I want to get at. This is Donna Brazile in her own words. A bombshell that everybody already knew. But because it was Donna Brazile, the person who's head of the Democratic National Committee, it was supposedly a bombshell. The Saturday morning after the convention, and this is the Political article, Saturday morning after the convention in July, I called Gary Gensler, the chief financial officer for Hillary campaign. He wasted no words. He told me the Democratic Party was broke and $2 million in debt. What? I screamed. I'm an officer of this party, and they've been telling me that everything is fine and that we're raising money with no problems. That wasn't true, he said. Officials from the Hillary campaign had taken a look at the DNC books. Obama left the party $24 million in debt, $15 million in the bank debt, and more than $8 million owed to vendors after the 2012 campaign, and had been paying off very slowly. Obama's campaign was not scheduled to pay it off until 2016. Hillary for America and the Hillary Victory Fund had taken care of 80% of the remaining debt in 2016, about $10 million, and placed the party on an allowance. This is supposed to be an impartial process. The process, meaning you have two people, or three, running for office. Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and somebody else. I don't remember who the other person was, and the person ended up being irrelevant. Now, in this run-up, the DNC is supposed to be an impartial body that's holding these elections. Essentially, we're going to be this fair edifice that allows these two candidates to run so we can choose the strongest candidate. What she's saying in this document, though, is even though you're supposed to have this body that's supposed to be overseeing a race, the body that's supposed to be overseeing the race is almost entirely beholden to one of the candidates because that candidate has it on life support. And apparently, in Donna Brazile's own words, place it on an allowance. Placed it on his allowance. It's like Hillary Clinton is the DNC's mom, and she's slapping him on the knuckles and putting him on an allowance. It's amazing. On the phone, Gary told me that the DNC had needed a $2 million loan, which on the campaign had arranged. No, that can't be true, I said. The party cannot take out a loan without the unanimous agreement with all the officers. Gary, how did they do this without me knowing, I asked. I don't know how Debbie relates to his officers, Gary said. He described the party as fully under the control of the Hillary Clinton campaign, which seemed to confirm the suspicions of the Bernie camp. The campaign had the DNC on life support, giving it money every month to meet its basic expenses while the campaign was using the party as a fundraising clearinghouse. Under FEC law, an individual can contribute a maximum of $2,700 directly to a presidential campaign, but the limits are much higher for contributions to state parties and parties' national committees. Individuals who had maxed out their $2,700 contribution limit to the campaign could write an additional check for $353,400 to the Hillary Victory Fund. That figure represented $10,000 to each of the 32 state parties who were part of the Victory Fund agreement, $320,000 and $33,400 to the DNC. The money would be deposited in the state first and then transferred to the DNC shortly after that. Money in the battleground states usually stayed in the state, but all other states funneled money directly to the DNC, which quickly was transferred to Brooklyn. Wait, I said. That Victory Fund was supposed to be for whoever was the nominee in the state party races. You're telling me that Hillary has been controlling it since before she got the nomination. Gary said the campaign had to do it or the party would have collapsed. That was the deal that Robbie Mook struck with Debbie, he explained, referring to the campaign manager Robbie Mook. It was to sustain the DNC. We sent the party nearly $20 million from September until the convention and more to prepare for the election. Now, this is magnificently illegal in addition to being magnificently unethical. Ultimately, you're telling everybody that this is a fair and even process. So despite you telling everybody this is a fair and even process, this was in no way a fair and even process. Even based on their own degree of standards, meaning even based on the extent they want to go, it was not a fair process. You were lying to people. You opened up your contest and allowed people to send money to something that you fundamentally had contorted towards the particular candidate, despite telling those people that this process was fair. Now, here's the catch. The fraud lawsuit is still going on. They dismissed part of this case. So they dismissed the case, but an appeal was pending. In the appeal, something else fantastic has happened, or unfantastic, I should say. Fucking amazing, actually. Democrats are making the argument that it is their First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders. And because it's their First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders. And mind you, adding to this argument that the Becks, Jared Beck, for the most part, has said some inflammatory things about them and hurt their feelings. And for whatever reason, that's supposed to be included in the case itself. But ultimately, First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders. Let's hear him out. I mean, maybe they have a point. Apparently, I don't have that footage either. I don't have that footage either. All right. So this is Elizabeth Voss, Disobedient Media. She's fucking awesome. Lawyers for the DNC argue the primary rigging is protected by the First Amendment. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. The defense counsel also argued that because of damn it, screwed up. Let's see. All right, I need to flip this. Give me 1 second. I have a highlighter for the areas that I want to talk about, but sometimes it screws up and does everything. All right. The DNC defense lawyers then argued that there is no legitimate basis for this litigation, which is at its most basic an improper attempt to forge the federal courts into a political weapon to be used by individuals who are unhappy with how a political party selected its candidate in a political primary. Well, yeah, if you cheat them, I would imagine they are going to be a little unhappy about that. The brief continued, to recognize any of the causes of action that the plaintiffs allege based on the animating theory would run directly contrary to long-standing Supreme Court precedent recognizing the central and critical First Amendment right enjoyed by political parties, especially when it comes to selecting the party's nominee for public office. This is for all intents and purposes doubling down on the first argument that they made. We can cheat whenever we want to cheat. We can go into the back room and we can choose a candidate. In this case, they're just making this argument in a different way. It is our First Amendment right to choose whoever we want as a candidate. And if that means that we need to cheat that guy to choose that person, then you can't do anything about it. That's an amazing argument. That's an amazing argument. They also took issue with Jared Beck himself. Some of the stuff that he was saying, I don't necessarily know. I mean, they dislike some of the disparaging remarks that Beck has been using against him. Let's finish your part. It appears that defendants in the DNC fraud lawsuit are attempting to argue that cheating a candidate in the primary process is protected under the First Amendment. If all they weren't enough, the DNC representatives argued that the Democratic National Committee had no established fiduciary duty to the plaintiffs or classes of donors and registered voters they seek to represent. It seems here that the DNC is arguing for its right to appoint candidates at its own discretion, while simultaneously decrying any fiduciary duty to represent the voters who donated to the Democratic Party under the belief that the DNC would act impartially towards the candidates involved. Think of it this way. It's like the party is saying, yes, we want to take your votes. Yes, we want you to vote for us. Yes, we want you to send us money. Yes, we want all that. But by the same token, we have no fiduciary duty to those people. Just because you're sending us money doesn't necessarily mean that you have influence or outright influence in our voting process and how our process runs. We choose whoever we want to choose. Thank you for your money. Thank you for your vote. This is an internal choice protected by the First Amendment. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Let me see. The part that they're talking about Jerry Beck. Here's another part that I thought was interesting. More so funny than anything else. The defense counsel also argued that because Jared Beck's outspoken Twitter posts, the plaintiffs were using the litigation process for political purposes. For example, plaintiffs counsel Jared Beck repeatedly refers to the DNC as shitbags on Twitter and uses other degrading language in reference to defendants. Fascinatingly, no mention is made regarding to the importance of the First Amendment at this point in the document. It's funny, when I first read this, I thought to myself, wait a minute, they're arguing that they have a First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders, but the lawyers himself doesn't have a First Amendment right, and it's like, what does one have to do with the other? He can say whatever he wants on Twitter. Ultimately, this stuff is boiling down to what are the merits of the case. He may call you shitbags because he thinks that you're shitbags. But, again, what are the merits of the case? Is this case right? I have a hard time believing the moment that you hit the point of saying, yes, I think they rigged the process. Whatever the degree is, you think they rigged the process. If you believe they rigged the process, and just going by Donna Brazile's statement, I don't know how you can come away from reading Donna Brazile's statement and not say, at the very least, there was an undue weight, or the undue weight was given to one person over the other person in a process that was supposed to be impartial. I wouldn't have given to Sanders if I knew that the process was going to be rigged. I don't know who would have given to Sanders if they knew that the process was rigged. Right there by itself. It's one thing if people say I would have contributed regardless. The moment that the person says, well, no, if I had additional information, I would have made a different choice. Well, why don't I have additional information? I don't have that additional information because they were lying to me, telling me that the process was fair and impartial. This is an amazing statement that this is what these guys are arguing. It is our First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders. And at the end of the day, we can essentially still choose whoever we want to choose. We are the fucking DNC. It's amazing. That being said, I want that to be in court. Like, I want that to be something that they put on the record. I want to see that in black and white with them saying we can cheat whoever we want to cheat. We can pick our candidates and smoke for a room. It's our First Amendment right to cheat Bernie Sanders. I want those arguments in black and white. It makes my case stronger. It makes my case totally stronger. Because my case is always, you need to leave that party. You get nothing by staying in the party. And in one indignity after the next, you have all these people trying to board this burning ship. But at the end of the day, these guys are literally in court saying we can cheat when we want to cheat. You can't touch us. You can't touch us. So, I honestly don't know what lefties think they're going to get out of the party itself. Particularly if your goal in this is to just board this particular ship. You're trying to board a ship and you're going to be mightily complacent to whatever they do because you're terrified of Donald Trump. Not realizing that boarding that ship and giving up your vote in that way. What has fundamentally changed? They've lost like 1,100 seats. They've lost the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court. They've lost the presidency to a maniac. Why do you believe that the public itself rejected the party in this way? Why? And what has fundamentally changed between the time they rejected the party to now? Nothing. Nothing. Part of the Russia hysteria is so nothing has to actually change. They want to be able to attack Trump while at the same time protecting their own flank, meaning don't talk about our failures, don't talk about us, don't talk about our donors, we just want to talk about Donald Trump. One last point, and I'll open it up to questions or conversation. Donna Brazile. So the reason why Donna Brazile is doing this it's a political point. I mean, at the end of the day, Donna Brazile is still a soldier. She's still part of the Democratic Party. It's hard to come away from that Tim Black interview and not realize that she's still trying to protect the party in the way that she's going about her affairs. Now, gutting some people while at the same token trying to save the whole thing seems to be the strategy in this point. So yeah, I'm going to put a knife in Hillary Clinton and Deborah Wasserman Schultz because they're the worst aspects of the bunch. And I need to create a distinction between them and the party itself. So yes, I'm going to go into Black. I'm going to go into these lefty networks. And I'm hoping that the people who are on these lefty networks give me a little bit more credibility now that I've put a knife and I've said something that they already knew. It's like you have this open secret that everybody knows. And the person who finally comes out and says, okay, yeah, you're right. It was cheated. That's supposed to give you some level of credibility more with this particular demographic. The only reason she would go on Tim Black and the only reason she would carry up to TYT is because she's trying to introduce that audience to her, if that makes sense. It's like her pitch for the most part is, hey, join the party, get involved, join the party. Adding the two together, it's, hey, I have a certain amount of credibility because, you know, I essentially stuck a knife in Hillary Clinton and Deborah Wasserman Schultz. And simultaneously, you should join the Democratic Party. She wants that message to that particular demographic on the left. TYT gets to that demographic. Tim Black gets to that demographic. It's the same reason why Joe Manchin is on TYT. It's the same reason why some of these other politicians have been going on lefty networks. They want to ingratiate themselves to a population that is far more populous than what they would typically get for somewhere like MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News. So that's my spiel. I'm going to open this up to questions and conversation. Troy O'Fallon, excellent research, JT. Thank you, Troy. Thank you. I appreciate it. When I saw this yesterday, and I was chomping at the bit to get to the story. I was chomping. Look, my argument is basic. You have nothing else pushing on the party apparatus. You have nothing else. So ultimately, you have two parties. One is batshit crazy, and the other one understands that because the other one is batshit crazy, that it can position itself as a way of saying, yes, I could take all this cash. Yes, I could be least worse. And in being least worse, we can essentially have this kind of scheme going, this gamesmanship. The whole point of governance itself gets thrown by the wayside. Fuck governance. We can use this gamesmanship in order to stay in office or get into office. So we can pivot ourselves against Donald Trump. We don't necessarily have to do anything. Doing something would mean actually addressing our donors and addressing the actual issues that affect this country. So we've contorted ourselves in this kind of weird political space. Being complicit and being enablers to the party in the way that it's trying to go about its affairs is not the way to get the party to change. If you want the party to change, you're better off leaving the party. Meaning the weight and the thing, the brick, the bat that you have, the man at the door, is all of those people, millions of people who actually left, who said, I'm done. You guys aren't meeting my needs. You guys are not in my best interest. And no, the other party is batshit crazy, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're grading on the curve. It doesn't mean we're grading on the curve. It doesn't mean that you're just going to get a vote just because the other one's batshit crazy. Fuck that. You earn that shit or they lose. That's what it needs to boil down to. Until people get to that point, until you have this kind of solidarity of no, nothing changes. There's no reason for anything to change. My mom told me one time after the election with Clinton, she said, well, certainly they have to change now. And I'm like, but you voted for Hillary Clinton. You voted for Clinton. It's like, why do you believe it has to change? The very fact that you voted for Hillary Clinton, it's a breathtaking unawareness of the behavior that drives other behavior. Meaning you incentivize their behavior by being complicit in voting for them in this way. It's like I always describe it as alcoholic drunk or the alcoholic drug addict, and you're fixing them a ham sandwich and making shots for them. At some point you leave. You stop answering questions of why do you have black eyes? Oh, I fell down the steps. I walked into a door. He slapped me, but he loves me. He has a good heart. No, you leave. At some point, you leave. You grow a spine and you walk out the fucking door. That drug addict, alcoholic is either going to die on the floor of a seizure or he's going to get himself together. In either case, being complicit or enabling the behavior is not going to get you to where you want to go. And by the way, this is not an infinite timescape. Like, this is not one of those situations where you have 1,000 years in order to work this shit out. I mean, ultimately, you have climate, like you have economic and social and environmental calamities that are potentials just based on the way we live our lives in this kind of unconscious, odd way, on this unreality of sorts. That shit needs to be addressed. And the political apparatus itself in no way is capable of addressing any of that stuff. It is magnificently tilted in one particular direction in regards to the people who are paying them and their donors. Now, taking everything else off the table. Everything else. Just climate by itself, ecological disaster by itself is a game ender. It's a game changer. And you're talking about a short window of time for something that needs to be done. Now, whether you're putting in a Democrat or whether you're putting in a Republican, ultimately, you end up with similar or the same policy. Meaning the outcome of this is for all intents and purposes the same. Yes, the person may not destroy the EPA, but no, they're also not going to do this Marshall Plan of changing the energy infrastructure over to some kind of green energy environment. Just saying. If you're not going to get the Marshall Plan and you're still going to hit the wall going at like 60 miles an hour, you're still dead at 60 miles an hour. The only capacity to change anything in this country is going to come from the left. If you don't have a vehicle in which to change those things, meaning if the left doesn't have anything that can articulate its political will, then nothing changes. Now, putting a Democrat in that office for the most part is all intents and purposes just putting back in status quo. if you need something to change, and if that change needs to come from the left, and if the political vehicle that you have right now is the Democratic Party, and that is for the all intents and purposes a right-wing party in any other country, then nothing changes. And supporting a party that advocates one thing, that screams about climate change, it believes that there's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet, but they don't want to do anything about the asteroid that's going to hit the planet. They believe in poor and poverty and everything else, but they don't really want to do anything about those things. They believe in healthcare, but they're going to put through Obamacare. It's like they're half-ass. Everything is half-ass. Everything is half-ass. So it's like, what's the point in supporting somebody who's going to be half-ass? Don't you want something done right? If you hit the wall at 90 miles an hour, if you hit it at 60 miles an hour, it's the same. The catch is, the person who's going to hit it at 60 miles an hour screams that he's only driving at 25, which is problematic. The other party doesn't even own up to it. But this party, and the point I'm making here is, if they're going to advocate something, then you need to hold them accountable to the things that they're advocating. How do you hold them accountable? Do you believe that you can hold them accountable by enabling them? Meaning every time they go to the polls, they're screaming, hold me accountable, and you're just automatically voting them in because you're terrified of the other guy. There is no such thing as accountability if you are always in the process of putting the person back in office because you're terrified of the other guy. So, this is magnificently too long, but it aggravates me to see people support the party in this way. Meaning they still rah-rah the party and everything else, and these guys are literally in court saying we can cheat whoever we want to cheat. It's fucking amazing. Absolutely fucking amazing. Democrats supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which kills EPA and labor laws instantly, but I otherwise agree with everything you said. Big 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they did. They did. And it's not otherwise. It sounds like you agree with everything I'm saying on this point. I don't think Democrats were full well for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but so were Republicans. Don't get it twisted. Republicans have been for all of these trade deals just as much as Democrats have been for these trade deals. The only difference in this case was it was Obama, and Obama was toxic. So even though they themselves wanted that trade deal, even though Mitt Romney himself was like, Obama need to get that trade deal. The wild part about it is, there's a clip. Romney called Obama everything but a child of God, even questioning whether the man was born in America. And yet, on that particular point, Obama's doing a great job on TPP. He needs to get that thing passed. He needs to get that thing passed. It was a Republican position to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And if Romney was in office, they would have passed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's just so happened it was Obama. It was toxic. So that's Catherine 12371. Me too, Jamal. I don't get it. Anyone sees Jimmy Fallon where Obama was saying he was down with the TPP? Yeah, you know me. That's a goddamn shame. Because what he's talking about is literally undermining the integrity of the country itself. Like, it's hard to get that across, man. You're talking about undermining the sovereignty of a country. And you're not undermining the sovereignty of a country for fairness or equality or because there is something of equal and even exchange that you're having with someone else. No, you have a bunch of corporations that's writing fucking trade deals that's fucking over everybody else, whether you want to talk about environmental laws or worker laws. Like you're literally talking about corporations being able to use certain chemicals, and that the United States wouldn't be able to challenge the things that they're doing or otherwise get sued for hurting their fucking profits. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then Obama will come out and say, this is a progressive trade deal, and trust me, and all this other stuff. I mean, just insane stuff. And then you read the deal, and you're like, oh my God, this man is a maniac. This man is a maniac. Not just a maniac, he's a fucking liar. It's on WikiLeaks. You can read it for yourself. The deal was so bad that they didn't want to expose it to the public until I think it was like 4 years after it was signed by the countries that were going to be involved in it. I mean, it's an amazing fucking deal. Absolutely. That's it. Investor dispute mechanism, which is why France rejected TTIP. And that's the other thing. In Europe, they have one TTIP. They have another one, TISA. TISA is more for banking regulations, which for the most part, which is literally overall banking regulations. So there would be stuff like if the industry was privatized, that you wouldn't be able to make the industry public again. Like, think about that. So let's say Britain private healthcare, and let's say, I'm using Britain as an example. America is so privatized. Let's say they privatize Social Security. Then something like TISA would say, look, because you've privatized this, you don't necessarily have the ability anymore to go back to a public option for this particular thing. So if you had an industry like healthcare that was private, then the ability to go to public becomes this kind of stilted thing. It's over the top gross. It's over the top gross. And that was one of those political awakening things where it is impossible for what he's telling me to be true and this document to be true. Both things can't be true. But those things are in conflict with one another. Either the words that are being used are being so slippery as to not necessarily just be honest with it at the point where the words are just lying to you, or he's just outright lying to me. Fact is, what makes more sense? That the Trans-Pacific Partnership was as ghastly as people were saying it was, which is the reason why they didn't want to show it to the public. Or that it was just this big mistake, that this was butterflies and rainbows, that the Trans-Pacific Partnership was fucking awesome, that people were just ragging on it for no reason, but they didn't want to show it for other reasons. If it was unicorns and rainbows in the way that they're saying, where everybody gets a pony, everybody gets a rose when they wake up in the morning, then they would have showed the bill. They would have showed the bill. If you had a bill where you said, I'm going to give everybody $1 million, are you going to show that bill? Meaning you wake up in the morning, you get $1 million. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. President. Thank you for the $1 million. Are you going to show people that bill? Yes, you show people that bill because you're telling people you're going to give them $1 million. Well, what about, I'm not going to give you $1 million. I'm going to punch you in the gonads every morning that you wake up. Now, is that a bill that you're going to put before Congress? No, because that bill is a stinker, and nobody's going to like that bill, and they're going to be pissed off that you're going to sign something like that. What about a bill that undermines the sovereignty of the country that you yourself are in? You probably won't show them that one either. What about a bill where they can sue you, where corporations can sue you in front of a tribunal, the tribunal made up of corporate lawyers, sue your country for laws that violate their profit-making enterprise? I mean, this stuff is amazing. Read it. Read it for yourself. Read it for yourself. It's a fucking disgusting bill. It really is. Yvonne Magolis. No, these were negotiations all under secret. Yeah, the public was not allowed to know the details until several years. This was done on purpose. Yeah. 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 I think it was either New Zealand's or Australia's prime minister who said that this stuff was supposed to be secret until like 4 years after everything was signed. Think about that. Think about that. And what's wild about it, to show you where Obama's interests lied. Meaning to show you what he actually cared about. Now, if you remember when the healthcare law came up, he was somewhat out of touch with the healthcare law. They named it Obamacare, but he was somewhat dejected from the whole thing. He let Congress write the bill, and he came in after the fact to sign it. On the Trans-Pacific Partnership, oh, he was engaged. One of the senators was like, he was so aggressive in trying to get my vote for this. And going all the way to the last minute, like pushing towards the end of his presidency. Hillary Clinton is trying to run away from the Trans-Pacific Partnership at 1,000 miles an hour. And Obama is still from state to state, Trans-Pacific Partnership. We got to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I mean, it's like, yes, I'm a lame duck, but yes, I'm going to pass that Trans-Pacific Partnership. These corporations gave me $1 billion. I need to pay those corporations back. Joe Hickey. Obama came to the UK to promote TTIP. Only 2 people had an hour a day under supervision to go over it. Same thing here. Same thing here. Elizabeth Warren, she would go in, she came out and was gasped by what she was reading. But she wasn't allowed to take anything in with her. She wasn't allowed to bring anything out with her. Look, just from a sniff test standpoint, just a sniff test. If your government is trying to pass something and it's so ghastly that it doesn't want you to see what they're trying to pass, then it's probably a good guarantee that it's not going to be in your best interest. It's not going to be something that you particularly like. If you have a room full of corporations, and those corporations are talking about a trade deal, there's nobody from your standpoint in that room. Their interest is certainly not your own. You have a bunch of 1%ers who are looking for ways to make more money for themselves. You have a bunch of politicians who are looking to make, I guess, more political moves for themselves, meaning I'm going to get more cash, my party is going to get more cash, that type of stuff. You weren't a part of that process. Now, for all these people who are rah-rah with Democrats and resistance and all this other stuff, they're selling you down a river. You're being sold a bill of goods. You've been totally sold a bill of goods. John Crabb, 67, 2018 Green candidate, Navy veteran Michael Cowell Songmaker Zizlik is running for U.S. Congress in California against Dianne Feinstein. This is the guy whose whole name, Jamal, get this guy on your show. This guy named Michael Cowell Songmaker. That's funny. Z-Slick. Yeah, that's awesome. Is that the guy who was singing? That might have been the guy who was singing. Jim Hayden. Thank you, man. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. And Jim Hayden, write a message. Write a message. Jeremy Chase, the TPP was a bill no one had access to. You know, and thinking about it, you can, if anybody's just curious about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I'm not going to hold this one too long because I have a few more that I want to get to. WikiLeaks released it. You can read it. You can read it for yourself. When people are saying this stuff like investor-state dispute and all this other stuff, they're talking about the bill because they've read the bill or read portions of the bill. Yeah, your party that you're calling the resistance tried to sell you down the river. And that party lost for damn good reasons because that party wasn't representing the interests of the people who were trying to put them in office. When Tim Black asked Donna Brazile outright, hey, how are people supposed to take this? Your party has just said that we can cheat whenever you guys want to cheat. And her response being, who's the lawyer? Who's the lawyer? I can't contest what you're telling me. Who is the lawyer? I'm just going to ask you who's the lawyer, and when you can't answer that question, I'm going to say, ha, and I'm going to move on, even though I really didn't say anything. It's like, hey, what do you say to people who think it's somewhat of an unfair thing, that you guys rigged the process, and that ultimately, if you're going to order or make an argument in court that you can essentially cheat whenever you want to cheat, how are people supposed to feel about that? Well, Tim, I mean, do you know the square root of 89? Do you know that, Tim? Not off the top of my head. No, well, there you go. Well, there you go. It's like, who gives two shits about what the square root is? Did you say it or not? Troy Fallon, yeah, it was a shit response. It was a ridiculous response. Big 1, 2, 3, 4. You might can't stand her, but you have some Democrats, or you have some who would consider themselves lefties, trying to say that woman is reformed and that woman is somehow, you know, a friend to the left. They're insane. That woman is a soldier to the end. She is one of the... That woman is a soldier to the end. She is a soldier to the end. So, yeah, BS. Striker Strike 9. Kevin T. Someone who knows they're all political bodies are buried will get away with it too. Yvonne Legolis. Yes, that is what the TPP TTIP was for context. Yeah, with China, yeah. So the whole point of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, at least the argument that they were making, is they wanted a way to isolate China. You were going to have this block, I think it was like 40% of the world's trade sewn up with this other block being China and Russia, Iran, those type of countries. They're using this as this kind of economic weapon against China. That was the point. I mean, that was the argument that they were making for it. Now, mind you, using that argument that it's about China, that sounds nice. But at the same token, it's also a corporate giveaway. This gives them reasons and pretexts to undermine environmental laws, undermine worker rights, worker protections, undermine wages. I mean, you're talking about fucking over a lot of people under this pretext of we need to take some kind of economic measures to fight China. Not to mention, when you create an economic bloc in this way, you've created this kind of other Cold War scenario where you have one side of the world versus the other side of the world. This stuff gets a little weird, man. It's somewhat problematic from the standpoint of a military standpoint. Do economic, I guess, wars in this way turn to hot wars? Sometimes, yeah. No, the gentleman, do a YouTube search for him. Otherwise, no one would ever get to know this guy. Just like all down candidates with Greens, no one will ever know who they are. Marxists hate China and Russia. I don't know why you think Marxists hate China and Russia. The trade dealers that keep corporations from following workers down the drain, they've unplugged. The trade dealers that keep corporations from following workers down the drain, they've unplugged. Late stage capitalism, Tim Floberg. Late stage capitalism is right. And think about it. I mean, it does kind of make sense. But one step after the next, you've undermined workers' protections. And you can kind of understand how what would happen if you have cash flowing through your political process, meaning the entire political process runs on cash. And the people who have that cash are the top 1%ers, the corporations, plutocrats. Then the political system is going to lean towards that group. I've always made the arguments. You have pitchforks, so you have dollars. Now, most people are stuck working all day, 40, 50 hours a week, and they don't necessarily have time to come home and pay attention to the assholes who are in office. So they get a flavor for what happens in politics. And I think most people feel like In the same way that I go about and do my job, that these guys need to go out and do their job also. The question becomes, what exactly is their job? And if part of the parcel to their job is, I need to make X amount in order to get elected, then that becomes somewhat of a practical issue. How do I make this much cash? If the public itself is completely dejected from the process, then the amount of cash wins it. If I make more cash, I can win. I can nibble around the edges. In regards to policy, I just need to be least worse. But we're taking money from all intents and purposes from the same people. You can understand that if politicians full well depend on the top 1% because they understand that the bottom 99% is, for all intents and purposes, dejected from the political process. And I am saying intense, guys. Somebody was like, dude, you're saying intense. No, I'm saying intense for all intents and purposes. Then it is practical as practical could be to say, I'm going to lean towards the cash. I don't have anybody pressing me on my flank. I'm going to lean towards the cash. So I'm going to say whatever I need to say. I can be Joe Yuckmouth and get out there and say all sorts of platitudes and everything else, and then add in what a noun, verb, Donald Trump sucks. But the reality of it is the specifics, the things talking about their donors, the things talking about class, the conversations that actually need to take place are not going to take place, because at the end of the day, the people who are giving them the cash don't want those things to take place. Until you have workers in this kind of alignment, this kind of proletariat that goes all throughout the United States, this kind of awakening of consciousness from the people in the country itself, then you're not ever going to have anything pressing against the political apparatus in a way that can actually change those things. And being complicit certainly is not going to get you anywhere. So, all right. So I'm going to end this because I feel like I'm running my mouth. Check out John Pilger. Yeah, John Pilger is pretty cool. I've seen him before. I tweeted a video to JT at the end of the American Empire by Chalmer Johnson is good. So I've seen so many of his videos. It's one of those guys. When I would have a book, I would look at the author of that book. From the author of that book, I would check out the lectures because I like hearing lectures from some of these people. So, you end up like a Zen, you end up like a Chomsky, Zizek. You have all these different, people. Bonadek, he's a college professor that teaches like philosophy and history. Chalmer Johnson was one of those people where I just stumbled across in one of his lectures. And it's like you go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. He is fucking fascinating. You'd be surprised some of the people you find online who is giving these lectures. Yeah. Johnson is good. Chalmers Johnson is good. He really is. He really is. All right. So he said, just woke up from a dream. Robert Pouquet Ray, subconscious shit. Yeah, that happens too. Like you're sitting somewhere, you're listening to something, you're asleep, and whatever you're talking about in your ear happens in the dream state. So if I'm, I'll end it on this because this is massively off topic. I would be, let's say, like listening to a meditation, and it's late at night, but maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I don't sleep all that well, so I tend to be up. Or better yet, watching like a movie that, let's say, like damn it, what is that movie called? There's this really good abduction film. I cannot think of the name of that film to save my life. But having that playing in the background and my wife asleep, and invariably within 30, 40 minutes, she started tossing and turning and whatnot, and you'd be like, hey, wake up. She'd be like, that fucking movie. Thought I was going to be abducted. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to end this. I have a few more that I want to do. Up next is going to be one on Corbyn. Somebody slandered Jeremy Corbyn, and that guy had to come out and essentially give this epic apology on Twitter. He's a Tory, so a bit of a prick. But I definitely want to do that one too. So I will see you guys in about 10 minutes, however long it takes us to flip over and upload. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support Patreon. Thanks, guys. And by the way, thank you, Jim Hayden and Troy O'Fallon. You guys are appreciated. All right, guys. See you in about 10 minutes.